So we have been spending most of our time doing online shopping. Credit cards cause you to spend more money than you normally would compared to what the internet says. I don't know how we'd even be able to afford one kid. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Talking About Personal Finance. I believe this is episode 4 this time. We're going to be talking about 3 different things tonight. The things we're going to be talking about are, first of all, holiday shopping, because it is that time of year. We're going to be doing our Christmas shopping and all that kind of stuff very soon. Black Friday, of course, right around the corner, along with all the other different deals going on throughout the month of December. We're also going to go ahead and talk about overspending today and how to avoid that. I think that's very timely considering the season that we're in with all the shopping that's going to be happening. The last thing we're going to cover before we finish up this video is going to be talking about cost of kids again. And this time we're going to be talking about groceries specifically. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is holiday shopping. So just a little bit of information for you about how we do holiday shopping. We plan on spending $45 per kid for this Christmas. And so that's going to come out to a total of $90. Part of the reasoning for that is because we know that both sets of grandparents are going to be giving them a lot of toys, as they have done in the past. So we felt like we don't need to add even more abundance of toys on top of what they're already going to get. So that's part of the reasoning for that. Obviously, as they get older, we will spend more. But for right now, just a couple of nice presents from us and then a few from each set of grandparents will turn into a treasure trove of gifts for them. So we felt like we didn't need to go too overboard on that. In addition to saving money for our kids, which we've been doing a sinking fund for the last 2 monthly budgets that we've done, we're also going to be spending roughly $90 for a gift exchange, like a secret gift exchange that we do with Alora's family. So every year we draw a name from a hat and we have to buy a Christmas present for that person that we drew from the hat. And last year I believe it was $40 or $45, something like that. That was the spending limit per person. So obviously Alora and I participate, so that means we'd be spending roughly $40 to $45 each, so about $90 for the whole thing. So we're going to have to budget that in for the month of December. The other thing that we haven't talked about yet, but we have done in the past, is buying gifts for, other people. And like my family doesn't do necessarily a secret Santa gift exchange like Alora's family does. So it's usually just buying gifts for each other, and there's no limit or anything like that. So we'll likely have to talk about what that will look like this year for our monthly budget. Now, in addition to all of those different parties and different present categories, if you want to think of it that way, that we are going to be spending money on, that's all going to fall under Christmas shopping, obviously. We like to buy a lot of these gifts through Amazon and online shopping in general. We have in the past done brick and mortar, going from store to store, but there are a lot of limitations in that, especially when people have certain ideas for gifts that they would like, because we do like to try to think about the things that they enjoy and try to buy things that match up with that, so that you're not just kind of wasting money on a gift that doesn't matter for them. The thing is, though, it's hard to buy those things on the list with brick and mortar stores a lot of times, whereas the internet, Amazon, you have a lot more variety and choices to get really what they're looking for. So we have been spending most of our time doing online shopping, and we will likely do it again this year with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and all the other things coming along. More than likely we'll be doing the exact same thing, going out and just buying online and then having it shipped in. If you have any ways that you guys do things differently for holiday shopping, whether it be different strategies for buying things, gifts, or different kind of traditions that you do when it comes to gift buying, I would love to hear those in the comments. Go ahead and let me know. And that's really all I have to share about holiday shopping. It's kind of a short one. Not a whole lot that I feel like is unique or different maybe compared to other people, but that's kind of how we do things. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next category. And the next segment is going to be overspending tips. So obviously when we get into these holidays and different periods of time throughout the year where spending and buying things is on the uptick, right? Where a lot of people are out buying and shopping. And even when you're not, even when it's just a regular Tuesday, right? There are different strategies you can use to avoid spending more than maybe you would have wanted to spend. And we're going to go ahead and go through a lot of these practical tips in this segment here. The first one that I have for you is sticking to the list. If you go shopping or grocery shopping and you're just buying groceries, stick to the list. Come up with a plan for what you want to buy before you go shopping. That way, when you're there, you're not enticed or drawn in by the different advertisements or the different sales or the interesting colors or whatever. I don't know what draws your attention and makes you buy what you buy, but regardless of the tactics that they're using, if you stick to a list, you won't be drawn into those things as often. So if it's not on the list, we're not buying it, and that'll keep you from overspending when you go to the store. It's a very practical idea. It can be sometimes tedious, but when I get my wife on here to talk during a segment, we can talk about why a list is great and why it's worth putting in that extra time. Because it's not just about overspending, but it's also about keeping that grocery bill low week after week, month after month, in a very consistent manner. The next tip I have for you is to sleep on it. What I mean by this is we have a lot of online shopping. Obviously, my wife and I are going to be doing a lot of that very soon when it comes to Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all that kind of stuff. When you find stuff on the internet, put it in the cart, and if you're not 100% sure you really want to buy it, let it sit in the cart. Give it about 24 hours, go ahead and sleep on it, and then the next day, open up your cart and look at that item. And if you still feel like you really, really need it, then maybe it's worth buying. And if you're looking at it and thinking you would probably do without, then go ahead and just remove it from the cart or put it in the save for later spot or whatever. Place it somewhere so that you're not going to end up buying it and then regretting later that you bought something that didn't really matter. The next tip that I have for you, besides sleeping on it, is to use a debit card. Now, this one kind of comes from Dave Ramsey. So Dave Ramsey uses the envelope system where you use cash and then you would take the envelopes there and you'd buy, and then once the money runs out in the envelope, then you're done, right? You can't buy any more. The problem is that a lot of places aren't using as much cash, right? A lot of them are card these days. And on top of it, it can be very inconvenient to go around buying things with cash all the time. So the next best trick is to use a debit card. Studies have shown that credit cards cause you to spend more money than you normally would if you were using a debit card. And I believe the reason why is that the consequence of spending that money is more immediate when you use a debit card compared to a credit card. Think about it. When you use a debit card, it goes right to the bank, and sometimes the transaction goes through the very same day or a day later. If you use a credit card, you spend the money, nothing changes in your bank account, you forget about it, and then about a month later you get the statement and now you have to pay for it. So, because the consequence is much later on, we often don't think that the consequence applies. Or as Dave Ramsey says, it doesn't feel like we're actually spending money. So that's why I highly recommend, if you find yourself overspending very often, don't use a credit card, use a debit card, because you're going to see that expense happen much sooner. And if you don't have the money in your bank account, there's obviously further consequences such as overdrafting, or if you have protection for that, it's going to simply deny your card and not allow you to spend that money. So again, use a debit card. I'm sure it'll help you out with your overspending challenges. The next one on the list is turn off notifications. So this goes back to that sleeping on it tip that I mentioned earlier. So we all have phones. I'm holding mine right now as I go through and talk to you with this. And we often have shopping apps on our phones, whether it's the Walmart app or the Amazon app or whatever. And those apps have push notifications. So those apps will push out different sales and deals that they're having, and they'll push that out onto your phone, and that will entice you to spend money where you shouldn't be spending it. So turn off the push notifications, or better yet, if you want to, you can go ahead and uninstall those apps, because that'll keep you from overspending and having those apps entice you on your phone to spend money that you don't otherwise have. I mean, think about it. It's like a mini advertisement on your phone every single day. I get these Amazon notifications talking about how there's a sale on this particular item that I looked at 3 weeks ago, or that's in my cart, or it's in my wish list. They're wanting me to spend the money now and then probably regret it later, obviously. So I would highly recommend getting rid of the notifications if that is something that is drawing you in and making you spend money where you don't want to spend it. The next one kind of goes back to the stick to the list tip, which is checking your inventory. So before you go grocery shopping, check your kitchen, see what you already have, and then of course stick to the list. This is an important one because oftentimes when we go shopping, we forget what is at home, and we may think, do we have apples at home? I can't remember. Are they going bad? I don't know. Let's just go ahead and buy apples now just in case. And then we return home and we discover we have a whole bunch of apples and they're not bad. And we just wasted a ton of money on new apples that we didn't need. So, do an inventory check, see what you have, make sure that you don't put those things on your list, and then go to the store and buy what you actually need. So it's an excellent way to avoid overspending, because there's a lot of people, they buy things they don't need, it rots in their kitchen, and then they end up having to throw it away, and it was wasted money. So instead, double check, do an inventory check. And I mean, honestly, this is what businesses do all the time. Stores, they do inventory checks because they want to make sure they know what's in the building and what they need to buy and what they don't need to buy. When employees, so I did Lowe's for a summer job this past summer, when we would move items from the top of the shelves down, from top stock down to the main area where customers could buy it, we would have to log that into our phones, letting the system know that we moved product down because they needed accurate inventory numbers. So if businesses need accurate inventory numbers to avoid overspending on things they don't need, then it's the same for us as well. We should be making sure we understand what's at home so we're not buying things we don't need out in the stores. All right. I have one more tip for you before we move on to the last segment. So this tip is take away the convenience of online shopping. So if you're about to buy something that maybe you don't need, if you have to type in your address and type in your name and type in your debit card information, your credit card information, and go through all the hassle of filling that stuff out, that may be an impediment to keep you from spending money on an item that really doesn't matter to you anyway. But if you have that convenience there where everything's already saved, then when you have that impulsive need to buy something and you click on it, right? And then the very next second you buy it, well, it's too late at that point. You've spent the money. I mean, sure, some apps, right, you can go back and you can try to get a refund and things like that. But for most people, once they do that impulse buy, they've gone through the transaction and they click buy and now it's coming to their house. That's it. That's the end of the story. They're not going to refund it per se. So to keep yourself from spending that money in an impulse buy and then regretting it later, make it where you actually have to fill out the paperwork, because then it'll be an inconvenience. And if it's inconvenient, it may stop you from spending money on that thing. It reminds me of a story of a coworker of mine, actually, at the school I work at. I don't even remember what we were buying. Oh yeah, it was a DoorDash order, that kind of thing, where they were going to bring the food to the school and a delivery. And the coworker was trying to order online, and their convenience pay, I think they were using Apple Pay or something like that, where it was super quick that they could just spend, it wasn't working. And they were going to have to fill out all of the information in order to buy the food. And she said, it almost makes me not want to do it. And the thought crossed her mind of actually just bringing to school a packed lunch and not actually spending the money. So that's like a real life example of somebody. I mean, granted, she did end up going and buying the product, but still, it's an example of it could slow you down. It could stop you from spending money where you don't actually want to spend it. So this shopping season, when you got all these things going on, all these advertisements and all these deals, and you're trying not to spend more than you should, go ahead and keep those tips in mind and try to put them to practice. Let's go ahead and move on to our third and final segment, and that is our little running series on the cost of having kids. Last time we talked about hospital bills. This time we're going to go ahead and talk about grocery shopping and the grocery bill compared to Alora and I when we didn't have kids compared to now. So when we were first married and it was just the two of us, the best that I can remember is it was about roughly $200 a month for groceries. Now, if you know our story, you know that we didn't budget very well early on, and we didn't necessarily communicate about money as effectively as we should have. So I am kind of using my best guess here. I believe it was about $200 a month for groceries. It could have been a little bit up or a little bit lower than that. Now, when Caspian came along, we did have a few advantages that went for us. So for example, Alora was able to breastfeed him. So that meant that we did not have to buy baby formula and all the things that went with that. So we did get a bit of a cost reduction there. And then once Caspian started to get older and started to be able to eat the food that we were eating, we would often give him food that came straight from the dinner table. So just a little bit of what we were eating, and that was it. And he was a pretty good eater when he was young. As he started to get older into the toddler phase, we noticed he became a very picky eater. And on top of being a picky eater, he became a snacker as well. So that, of course, increased the expenses for grocery shopping. I believe it was probably around $300 a month for grocery shopping when Caspian started to become a little bit more picky and started to eat more snacks. And I would think that the reason why our grocery bill has gone up is because of the snack expense that we have to pay pretty much every week, because our kids run through snacks like crazy. They're always snacking all the time. And snacks aren't exactly super cheap, especially when you're buying them constantly. The $2 to $5 range over and over and over and over again every single week does add up fairly quickly. When Ellery started to come along, it was the same thing. Alora was able to breastfeed her, so we didn't really see the price increase until she started to get older. She, so far, fingers crossed, has not been a picky eater and has been eating pretty much everything we've given her off of our plates and things. But she is also a big snacker too. So while we may be saving some money in the sense that she's eating what we're eating, she is also costing us money because we're going through snacks even faster now that we have two kids that love to snack. So I think we bumped up the grocery bill about $50 to $350 early this year. And then I think about midway through this year, we bumped it up another $50, and now it's about $400 a month for groceries for my wife and I and our two young kids. Caspian's 3, Ellery is 1.5. And so that's kind of a little bit of a gauge there for you to figure out, how much they should probably be eating. So if you're somebody who is looking to have a child in the future and you're trying to gauge or get an idea of what that's going to cost you, if you don't do baby formula, it probably isn't going to cost you a lot initially. And then as time goes on, it will grow and you'll just have to learn to adjust to that. So for us, the trend has been about $100 more a month per kid. Because remember, I told you it was about $200 a month for the two of us back when it was just the two of us. And then with Caspian, it was about closer to $300. And now with Ellery starting to eat food, it's now closer to $400. Now, of course, that's also going to go up as they get bigger and they start to eat even more food because obviously their bodies are growing and they need that food to continue to grow. And we'll have to adjust as that goes along too. So just as an initial idea, it's probably going to be maybe $100 more a month for groceries. Now, of course, that can be dependent upon the region that you live in. Cost of living is different in various parts of the country and also in the world. We live in the Midwest, so those prices are Midwest prices. One thing I would say as we start to wind down this podcast and also this segment is that the data that you see on the internet about how much kids cost when it comes to groceries or just in general, I would not use those numbers as a strong guidance to how much it's going to cost you personally, because it's going to be different for every person dependent upon the area that you live, with the different cost of living and the lifestyle that you have. For us, it has been significantly less than what the internet would say is the average cost for a kid every single year. And that has definitely been a good thing, because if it was compared to what the internet says, I don't know how we'd even be able to afford one kid, let alone two. And I just would like to let that be an encouragement to you that just because you see all this stuff on the internet, it doesn't mean that that's really true. A lot of the stuff on the internet is averages, and on top of averages, a lot of times they're also making you buy things that aren't necessary. So for example, a lot of times the average cost for a kid will include their college tuition, which you may not be considering paying for their college. It will also consider brand new clothes or certain kinds of meals that you may not be necessarily cooking them. And it might be including sports or activities that your kids may not even participate in. So don't take those things as gospel. Instead, I would take those numbers with a massive amount of salt, because those things are not real. They are not going to be your real personal situation. The best that you can do is talk to the people around you that have kids and get a little bit of a gauge from them how much it costs. And even that I would take with a grain of salt as well, because their lifestyles may be different than what your lifestyle is. They may be paying for daycare and you don't plan on paying for daycare. Or maybe they're not paying for daycare and you do plan on paying for daycare. So I would instead talk to people around you, pick up little clues here and there of things, and then that should hopefully give you at least a rough ballpark idea of what it may cost, and then kind of go from there. And so with these grocery bills that I've been telling you, same thing. Take it with a grain of salt. These things may be similar to what you would spend, but it might not be similar at all because of where you live, or maybe you're not, sticking to the list. Maybe you're not meal planning and doing some of those other things that we are doing to kind of really bring that bill down as low as we possibly can, which I recommend. If that's something that you're wanting to do, go ahead and try those things out. You may see a significant difference in your grocery bill. But we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you for sticking around and watching the full length of this podcast. If you have any comments or thoughts about what was discussed today, go ahead and let me know down below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.